Now, I keep saying that this is just like being in a movie theater, but you know what? It's a lot better because we are going to have fascinating presentations and post-film discussions. For example, before we get to the long-lost Phantasmagoria film, Cindy Water is here, and she's going to do a tight 10 on Phantasmagoria basics. It's not exactly the most read Lewis Carroll piece, right? We don't quote it quite as often as the Alice books. So Cindy, who is a retired school teacher and is now on the board of trustees for the Napa Valley School District and loves Phantasmagoria, so she was the perfect choice. She is going to talk to you now. Welcome, Cindy, and I'm going to tee up your PowerPoint while you speak.
Thank you, Heather. And that was just a delightful introduction. I love the Nickelodeon. That was so much fun. I am thrilled that we're having a Lewis Carroll Society of North America premiere, long delayed, of Phantasmagoria, directed by Tiziana Caminada, who will be joining us after this very short talk. Okay, she's right. Heather is correct. Many Carrollians have not read Phantasmagoria, first published in 1869. The name means a sequence of images like those seen in a dream. And I adore that word. And Brian Sibley told me that it was also a term for type of a theatrical performance in Café Society Paris, in which images were projected onto clouds of shifting smoke, which sounds delightful, depending on the smoke, of course. Phantasmagoria has 150 verses, making it Carroll's longest poem, longer than The Hunting of the Snark. I spoke about it at our 2018 meeting at the Morgan Library because its sesquicentennial was coming up, and I'd never heard it discussed at a Lewis Carroll Society meeting. And it is extremely funny. Yep. Let's see, there's another one coming up, two men cowering outside of a cave. The pictures are by A.B. Frost, a gifted American illustrator. And those were in the second edition. I just think they're really brilliant. This is a narrative as opposed to a lyric poem. It tells a story. In it, a little ghost appears in a man's home one night, and after consuming all his host's food and drink and telling his life story, which includes a taxonomy of ghosts and the quotidian of haunting, he realizes he's in the wrong house all along. So he decamps and he leaves the deflated tenant of the house, our narrator, just a little bit lonesome for the odd little creature. While not exactly a phantom of delight, the impertinent spirit was good company. And these are the ghost's brothers and sisters sitting on a fence. And I'm going to read the first two verses of the poem just to give you an idea of what Carroll was doing with it. Just two little short ones. Canto 1, the trysting, and a canto is a division in a poem. And we think of it as a chapter in a book, and each canto here will have several stanzas. There are 8 cantos in Phantasmagoria. One winter night at 9:30, cold, tired, and cross and muddy, I had come home too late to dine, and supper with cigar and wine was waiting in the study. There was a strangeness in the room, and something white and wavy was standing near me in the gloom. I took it for the carpet broom left by that careless slavey. And that is Carroll's sketch, by the way, his suggestion to the artist. Well, let's see. First, the rhyme scheme of the verse is A, B, A, A, B. Verse 2 is C, D, C, C, D, and so on. Carroll does this throughout 150 verses, and I know the English vocabulary is enormous, but that takes talent. Carroll was an excellent poet. We are familiar with his brilliant parodies in the Alice books, but sometimes forget how he was a master of poetic composition. Each of these cantos is a single sentence. It is a strict form, which is a contrast with the silliness of the subject. And I could spend a week on this poem, and I would if you had it in front of you, but I will simply point out that each line has 4 iambs, da-da, 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 which we call meter, and this meter is an ancient one. You might say it is haunted by its past. Meter makes it easier to memorize. People retained religious texts, epics, ballads, plays in this way in the days before real publishing. And doesn't the opening line remind you of Edgar Allan Poe, One Winter Night at 9:30, Once Upon a Midnight Dreary, or so similar? While this is an amusing and nonsensical story, a ghost appears in a house, tells the story of his life to a surprised host who is probably of the editorial or professorial class, eats all the food, criticizes the wine, and skips off when he discovers he's in the wrong house. The first canto alone contains many Carrollian preoccupations. I've mentioned time, but there's also a lively interest in food and drink, as well as a creature who can appear and disappear, Cheshire Cat, like the Cheshire Cat. Class consciousness, there is a caste system of the undead. Etiquette, the number 42, being in nothingness, a tendency for the characters to order each other about, an alternate universe, the disorientation resulting from discovering it, and an acceptance of the genuinely weird. At one point, the host worries about feeding a creature who is actually translucent. Later in the poem are mentions of Guy Fawkes, incidents of violence, throwing a bottle, assaulting a host, allusions in literature from Hamlet and Snark to romantic poetry, wordplay, and this is the nightmare, reminiscent of the Fuseli painting, and the eternal question, am I awake or is this but a dream? All of these are familiar to readers of the Alice books. And I love the last line, old turnip top, good night. Let's go back to the first verse. Temporal concepts are mentioned 4 times. One winter night, 9:30, too late to dine, was waiting. There is an uneasy sense of being too late for something, a tension which prepares the reader for the ghost. There are lots of one-syllable words, that's forceful, and the repetition of and acts as an intensifier. The second stanza opens with, there was a strangeness in the room. That is pure Emily Dickinson. And something white and wavy reminds me of the early Gothic novels. Aside from being just spooky, it creates a sense of ineffable oddness. And I said I could go on forever about this work, so I suggest you read it for your own pleasure. 5 years ago, we had quite a discussion as to whether Lewis Carroll believed in the supernatural, and he did believe in the resurrection of the body and the life everlasting. But no, he did not believe in ghosts. Although he was fascinated by the paranormal and was a member of the Society for Psychical Research, and he owned many books on ghosts, legends, folklore, fairy tales. I recommend you read Lewis Carroll among his books by Charlie Lovett to get a sense of Lewis Carroll's reading habits. He was an omnivorous reader on everything. As A.L. Taylor said, Oxford at that time was the intellectual storm center of England. And Carroll had an interest in the popular culture, and a fad for the supernatural was part of Victorian culture. And in fact, ghost stories were quite a fad in England. It could have been at that time, it could have been a reaction to the modernization of England that was occurring very quickly. Charles Dickens wrote ghost stories. There were ghostly references in Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. And in fact, Charles Bronte's biographer, Mrs. Gaskell, wrote ghost stories. Each county in England has its own ghost stories. Oxford, as a town of martyrs and monarchists, has an unusual number. In 2018, we had what was, for me a little bit, it was a nerve-wracking discussion on whether the Church of England has exorcisms. I've never heard of such a thing, not that it would be broadcast, but then I started fantasizing about what if Queen Elizabeth, who at that time was the head of the church, the actual head of the church, what if she took part in exorcisms? Wouldn't that be a wonderful story? And Phantasmagoria and other poems appeared in 1869. A second edition appeared in the book Rhyme and Reason in 1895. And as I said, in 1893, excuse me. As I said, this edition was illustrated by Arthur Burdett Frost. Here he is. He was born into a prosperous and enormous Philadelphia family in 1851, and he died in Pasadena in 1926. He became a very successful illustrator and artist. Mark Burstein, he was a pioneer in the development of comic strips, which we can see in his pictures for Phantasmagoria, which are very antic and humorous. And he was largely self-taught, but he trained in Philadelphia with Thomas Akins and William Merritt Chase. He had an early success, and he worked at Harper's and Scribner's with some of the top illustrators of the day, including Howard Pyle. He had great range that included medieval recreations to modern sport, all rendered with extreme precision. He illustrated works by Mark Twain, such as The Prince and the Pauper, And most famously, Joel Chandler Harris's Uncle Remus. There's that rabbit. And that is Brer Rabbit. Lewis Carroll was looking for an illustrator, and the usual suspects were either unavailable or avoiding him. And so he selected Frost. And I believe this collaboration was as successful as the ones with Tenniel, Furness, and Holiday. The correspondence between Carroll and Frost reveals a kindly, avuncular Carrollian persona, according to Lewis Carroll and his illustrators by Edward Wakeling and Morton Cohen. He was concerned about Frost's health, his finances, his family, his family's health, and so on. Later, Carroll would get on Frost's nerves, typical with Carroll and his collaborators, but for this project, they really got on swimmingly. Of course, Carroll was full of suggestions, verging on directives, and he included sketches, which you saw, but he often had good ideas, and Frost didn't mind. For example, Carroll was worried that one scene of confrontation might look too violent. So a metal warming pan was expunged, substituting a pillow instead. And there's Carroll's drawing, and there is the final one by Frost. And I will leave you now so we can watch the wonderfully entertaining film. So I will say, Old Turnip Top, good night. And did the book sell? Yes, it was a success. And here's a copy years later, last summer in Blackwell's Books of Oxford. And it was once owned by A.B. Frost's sister. And now let us watch Tiziana Caminada's final project for graduation from film school, Phantasmagoria.
Thank you, Cindy. And I love that you did my introduction for me. And yes, and Tiziana is here, and we will discuss the film with her after. It is 18 minutes long, and just give me one moment to tee it all up, and we'll see you after the film. Applause all around. How fun was that? And I'm still reeling from those credits. That was a student film, everybody. Those credits went on for a while. 2 continuity people, for pity's sake. So we are going to welcome back Cindy Water. She is going to talk to Tiziana Caminada, the filmmaker who is here. And Tiziana has an amazing story. She was a social worker in her 20s, and she decided that she could do more good being a filmmaker, spreading the word further. And so she went to film school, and she worked in Swiss television for a long time. She now works for herself, directing documentary films. And it all started in 1989 with Phantasmagoria. Cindy, what was the thing that most surprised you when you first saw the film?
Well, the first thing that surprised me was I was wondering where they got Emmanuel Macron to appear in the Lewis Carroll part. And the sets were very impressive. The detail with the photographs of Alice and another one of his subjects. And the casting really struck me. And I believe we have Alexandre is here. He has replaced Jeeves as the ideal gentleman's gentleman for me. I thought the casting was brilliant, and several other people did too. One person, the first comment was someone who's really enchanted with the character, with the actress who played the little ghost, Anna Pernisi. And it was, it had, the best line was, original line, I'm undead, not brain dead. Extremely funny.
All right, I'm going to make myself scarce, by the way, so you two can talk. But just a reminder to everybody, please put your questions in the Q&A feature, because they definitely get lost in the chat. You see how active our chat is. And Tiziana, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And wow, a digital debut after 34 years. So exciting.
Hi, Tiziana.
Hi.
Tiziana, we have a wonderful criticism of the movie, criticism in the good sense, from Joel Berenbaum. I don't know what I expected, but this is so much better than whatever that might have been. And people are agreeing with them. And the other comments are, along the lines of fantastic, inspired, and wonderful. So I think we have a hit here, and I'm so thrilled. We've gotten a lot of comments on casting, and could you tell us how you went about finding people, because they're perfectly suited, I believe, to the parts? How did you find your actors?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Ah,
perfectly.
Hello to everybody. Well, the casting, I mean, at the school we had a choice. We had a choice. Some people was helping us to find the casting, and there was a book, a big book, with a picture of all the actors in London, and I chose a couple of them, and then well, when I met Anna, it was for me clear that she was the ghost. She was a perfect person. Raymond, I liked him straight away. I had a beginning, another choice was Peter O'Toole. But Peter O'Toole, at that moment, he was very busy. So I said, well, it's too big actor for me, forget it. And Raymond was perfect, really. It was the right person. 1 week before to start the shooting, everything was ready. I received a call from the agent of Peter O'Toole telling me, "Oh, Tiziana, Peter O'Toole actually he will be happy to do the film, but he will be free only in a month." I said, no, I can't. I was so sorry. At the same time, I had to put down everything, stop everything, a crew of 18 person almost. So I said, no, I can't do that to my crew. I can't do that to my actor. But I still sorry about. Well, anyway, this film was nice like that. And I think Raymond did the perfect job, and it was a perfect Lewis Carroll. So, voila.
I agree. I believe Raymond was perfect for it. And but it's always fun to think about what might have been. And you did have a time, you had a schedule. This was your senior project. This was your graduation project.
Yes.
Yeah. And they're all absolutely wonderful. Could you tell me why you chose Phantasmagoria? It's not the first Carrollian work that comes to most people's minds.
Well, because globally, I had I like Lewis Carroll on all this what is that. I was not an expert, but my feeling about his work was that he was an anti-conformist. He was somebody different, and my feeling about Alice was that she was a girl that she was breaking the rules a little bit. She was going further, and so I said to myself, I was looking a little bit on that, and then I said, why? I don't know how to explain, but when I saw Phantasmagoria poems, I said it's not exactly like that, but why Lewis Carroll, one moment or another in his life, he started to tell story in a different way, tell a story that they have never existed, and they're still very, very powerful today. So when I was reading this poem, I said, that could be an inspiration for a film. If a ghost did visit Lewis Carroll one night, if it was this Lewis Carroll story, and if this ghost did open a door or a window in the head of Lewis Carroll, and he was able from that moment to tell plenty of other stories. If the rational and the irrational having a fight during one night, and the irrational was winning. I'm not saying that the rational it was not right, but the irrational did open a little bit the mind of this person. So, that it was. I was not really exactly staying on the poem. From the poem, I invented the story. And well, there was plenty of sentence that was helping me. There was a structure, and from this structure, we wrote together. I was not alone, of course. Had a lot of help from Gareth Jones and from Alexandre Veron. There are a lot of people around me that they knew better Lewis Carroll, and together we made this script. And for me was and it was in a certain way a little bit feminist film, because Alice is a girl and this girl in my film is a little bit Alice. So, and the ghost, we don't know who is exactly, but maybe it's a girl. I don't know.
I know it's, someone just said it was an inspired choice. It lends itself well to exploring. Stan Isaacs wants to know if a copy of this film will be available any place. Will it be bought? Could anyone buy it?
It's not to be sold because but it's available on YouTube from tomorrow. Everybody can see it on YouTube. You will have a link from tomorrow. You'll be able, because I mean the premiere is for the Lewis Carroll Society today, but from tomorrow, because I have to say thank you to the Lewis Carroll Society that they helped me to digitize, because it was in 60mm and it was full of dust, and then they helped me. They financially paid this digitalization, and from now on the film, it will be free on my YouTube how you say, the channel.
Yes. Okay, that's great. That will make many people very, very happy. Someone did say that you were lucky that Peter was busy, because Raymond is just perfect in this role. I can't get over how excellent the casting. And someone said, how wonderful it will be on YouTube. Thank you. Excited to rewatch. But we had an earlier comment about talking about how they loved that you had filmed it on actual film. You know, you had Fuji film. And
Yes.
There was just this, the setting was very saturated looking. I love the deep green, that Victorian dark forest green was so beautiful, and you know, the lights and everything. It's hard to believe it's a student film. It's really, but of course, by the time you graduated, you were a professional. Someone says they would buy it if it's possible. People really like this. This is wonderful. And you did have a lot of expert help. I saw Edward Wakeling in the credits.
And speaking of the sets, Tiziana, didn't you say something about people actually tried to buy some of the sets from you?
Yes, some member of the Lewis Carroll Society in Oxford, they came to the screening at the school, the graduation screening, and they approved the film. That was for me such a relief, because they were very straight on what is right or wrong. And they said, well, you respect the Lewis Carroll environment. That could be his house, exactly his house. And they wanted to buy the props, the object. And I had to say, sorry, I can't. They are not mine. They are props that you rent from the school, from the studios. So from the film studio. So it was not mine. But and even the panel, the wall, everything was paint. So we have to each film, everything was going to be repaint. I had not the right to take that, but it was such a funny, and I was so proud of it, because I mean, the Lewis Carroll Society in Oxford telling me that. I was a young student, so I said, wow. I was very proud, I have to say that.
Oh, you should be. And I'm going to bust in with some audience questions here, but Cindy, of course, please stick around for the conversation. I can answer the first one. Bernadine is wondering, what does the ghost look like without the makeup and the costume? Bernadine, it was the same actress playing the niece, so you know what she looks like. And actually, my question is, I tend to read a little too much into films, Tiziana, it's a flaw of mine. I think my theory is the ghost is actually the niece. Like she went there in the middle of the night to teach him a lesson, and he's going to start spending some time with me and appreciate me more. Maybe, right? Okay.
Yes.
Bernadine also wants to know where you learned to take pictures of ghosts. All right, let's see. Sarah wants to know, the sound design is very strong. Was the dialogue recorded live on set, or was a lot of it post-dubbed?
Recorded live on set.
All of it?
Yeah, all of it. Just some, when she disappeared in the books, at that moment it was recorded in the studio, but not the rest was recorded on set.
Wow. And Anonymous is wondering what I think a lot of us are for a student film. There was a huge crew, not to mention the scenery and the possibility of A-list actors. You almost had Peter O'Toole. Where did the budget come from for this masterpiece?
The budget was a little bit from the school, a little bit from some sponsor, like a Swiss bank, for example, £5,000. I think altogether it did cost me, because the crew was not paid, the actor wasn't paid. I had to pay the props, I had to pay the mask, the 6 masks for the ghost. I remember I have the moment, so it was costing at that time something like £10,000. That was nothing for such a huge set, because it was not that, it looks small, but it was not that small. And the costume and everything, the food for the crew, we had to pay, of course, but that's all what we paid. The actor was free.
I'd like to know how Alexandra felt about not being paid for that. And actually, Alexandra, if you have any memories you'd like to shoot into the Q&A there, I'd love to hear them. Love Gift of a Fairy Tale, what a beautiful username, is wondering, how does it feel to finally have the film screened publicly and for the Lewis Carroll Society of North America?
Alexandra asked me that?
Oh, no, this is someone else. No, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So how do you feel?
What? I'm feeling very emotional. I have to speak in English, and I'm very grateful to you, to the Lewis Carroll Society, to have made that possible. I mean, he was sleeping in a drawer for 35 years. So I'm so happy. You cannot imagine. I mean, I'm just grateful to all these people that they helped me at that time. I sent to all the crew in India, in Mexico, in USA, because the people is a little bit around the world. The crew was an international crew because it was an international film school. And they are so happy and all emotional about seeing again the film. I hope they will be able to see it again. Anyway, they were all very happy. And Anna Pernici, I found the actors again. I couldn't find Raymond. Last week, I found Anna, and she was so happy. I mean, 35 years that we haven't talked, and I found her. She's now, she's still actress, but she's film director too. So she was
amazing.
And she's looking forward to see the film again, because she saw it 35 years ago.
I love it. And yeah, and by the way, it was an unofficial GoFundMe that I set up, and you all be thanked in the closing credits of part 1 of our conference today. But yeah, I didn't make it an official Lewis Carroll Society of North America venture, because I was honestly, Tiziana, I was terrified something was going to go wrong with just this canister sitting in a corner all dusty for years and years, but it all turned out so beautifully, so I am thrilled as well. And our final question, our final question for you, were there any films or directors that you thought of or were inspired by while you were planning this film?
No.
No. All you.
Honestly, no. It was just what no, not really. I mean,
all right. I think that answers it.
Maybe unconsciously, I cannot say that in my unconscious somewhere, but no, we did imagine together with my crew. We made we went to visit Oxford. We went to visit the Lewis Carroll Society over there. We did look at the pictures, but no, the rest we just had the pleasure to imagine it, and we did that. It was a crew. I was not alone, so it was it was a team work.
And Alexandre backs you up. He says the atmosphere on the set was great. It's a very good memory for me. And Tiziana was very inventive. Yay. All right. You know what? We have to wrap this up. Perfect timing. We're already on time. First hour, and we're not going over by a second.
May I just add something?
You may, yes.
Yeah. That's for me, the message of Lewis Carroll is still the same. That the message file is obey the rules is not always interesting. That is what I think. And the non-conformist message of Lewis Carroll is very important today. We have to get in past conventional wisdom sometime. And I think Lewis Carroll is a good guide for us still today.
Well, that
That's
is a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much.
He was not a moralist. So it's what I like in him.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cindy and Tiziana.